came back. Let me catch up on the day on Bucks Twitter. Oh, it's crazy on Bucks Twitter right now. And here's why. An article came out calling for Adrian Griffin to be fired.
Wow.
10 games in.
Jesus Christ.
Said, hey, this man should be fired.
It feels racist.
That's what a certain subset.
And I ain't even read it. It just feels that. Like, come on, fam.
A certain subset of Bucks Twitter feels just like that. And there's another subset that's pretty much like, no, he needs to go.
Jesus Christ.
But the most voices I saw were actually kind of logical in the middle, and I was very thankful to see it. There's a lot of people saying it's 10 games, y'all. Let's give it a little bit more time.
Yeah, if y'all doing that, y'all talking about, the Dame trade was bad. And if y'all, how y'all overreacting at this point.
And I saw Eric also had a thread about a podcast he listened to or something about another team that knew it was time to fire their coach pretty early on.
Yeah, you want me to
go ahead?
Okay, so back in 2021, I went back and looked for it and found it and listened to it again just to make sure that I wasn't misremembering things.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2021, Amin El Hassan used to be on ESPN, formerly worked in the front office with most notably the Suns.
Okay.
He went on Roger Bell's podcast. They were telling a bunch of stories about their shared time with the Suns.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this was when the Suns were good. Well, Amin's time spanned from when the Suns were good to after Steve Nash.
Okay.
And if you remember, Mike D'Antoni left, went to New York.
Mm-hmm.
They hired Terry Porter as his replacement.
Mm-hmm. I remember that.
Terry Porter, when he got the job, because Amin was in there with the interviews, he's like, when he got the job, he said, hey, I'm coming in to kind of tweak the defense. I'm not going to touch the offense. Offense is going to be cool. Y'all got it. Y'all perfect. I don't need to do anything. I'm going to just come in and help y'all with the defense because that's my specialty, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
He said they went to a coach's retreat in August. The whole first day, all Terry Porter talked about was offense.
Yeah.
To the point where Steve Kerr, who was the general manager at the time, was like, hey, we ever going to get the offense? I mean, we're ever going to get the defense? They're like, okay. The brain trust was like, hey, you know what? Maybe he just wants to like get this on our radar so that when it comes time to kind of implement some of the stuff that he wants to run, we're aware.
Yeah.
First day of training camp comes.
Mm-hmm.
All they talking about offense. He said they brought in Dick Bennett, who used to coach Wisconsin, coached Terry Porter at Stout or Whitewater or wherever he went. First thing he showed was them on a fast break, Roger Bell pulling up for a three-pointer. He's like, it went in, but that's a bad shot for us. Again, this is our 7 seconds or less Suns. And he's like, and you saying that this is a bad shot, and he wanted to implement some triangle stuff and run some backwards as not at all progressive offense. Again, 7 seconds or less Suns who don't have a problem with offense whatsoever.
Yeah.
So like, Roger Bell was like, I was out that day. He's like, I knew this motherfucker didn't know what he was doing. Like to the point where he was disruptive in practice, which obviously was bad. But like, because him and Boris Diaw were so disruptive, they wound up trading them mid-season. Then like a month later, they fired Terry Porter because like the conclusion that they came to was the same thing that Roger Bell said from the beginning, which was he doesn't know what he's doing. He's changing stuff that doesn't need to be changed. He's bad for the coach. Like it was a whole bunch of stuff. And like my thing was always, and I've had like that stuck in the back of my mind where it's like, I don't know if Adrian Griffin is a good or a bad coach, and it's not about that. It's like, is he the right coach for this team at this moment? At this moment, the Bucks don't have time to waste, really. Like this isn't like a let them grow into the job type situation. This is we have like a 2 to 3 year window. We wish to win a championship. Yeah. So if he can't adapt to, like, because like I'm always thinking about, he's been waiting 15, 20 years for
14 interviews.
14 interviews. He's been waiting a long time to have a head coaching job. So he's been thinking a long time, like, when I get my own team, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. So for him, he's like, I got my chance.
Yeah.
Let's go. You know what I mean? But that's outside the context of this roster, this situation. Like if he was taking over, like if him and Ime switched and he was taking over the Rockets and like they had all the money to burn in the offseason, he could bring in the players that needs
you can slow roll a little bit.
Right. But like you can then go out and get like Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks because like you can get people that specifically fit what you want to play.
Right.
Whereas with the Bucks, you're kind of locked into a roster that was built to play blood ball.
Yeah.
So
They couldn't make that many changes this summer as it
No.
was.
And the biggest one that they made actually was even further detrimental to the vision that I'm assuming he had coming in. So it's like, I don't think that you have to keep doubling down like, oh, we made this thing. It's like, if you know that this is wrong, cut bait, move on, go in a different direction. The only thing is, I don't know if they have anything to pivot to. So it's kind of like you got to see it out at least through.
Got to see it out, my boy.
Yeah.
At least like if you still had Terry Stotts on the bench,
Yeah,
like,
then it's easier to make that
hey,
decision.
there's somebody. Joe Prunty, we've already seen that
seen
movie.
that. Been there,
we
done that.
don't need to do that again.
No more energy and effort part 2.
So again, like I hate calling for people's job, especially bad coaches. So like I'm not doing that. Joe Barry, you're an exception. Get the fuck out.
I didn't know he's what.
He's not.
No, he's not. I'm saying like that's the only coach that I'm calling for a job. It's like, bro, you no. But like if the brain trust knows, we kind of fucked this up, and like don't just keep like trying to save face. Like if that's the move you gotta make, that's the move you gotta make.
Yeah.
All that being said, it has been 10 games. And Ime Udoka, bringing him back into it, the Celtics were like below 500 well into the season his first year. I remember an article came out back half of that year kind of saying he had to learn to find his voice. Like he knew what he wanted to do, but he was too busy like trying to walk on eggshells and try to placate like the different things going on in that locker room. And at one point he's just like, I know what I'm about. Did we get knocked off? Okay. I know what I'm about. And like he had like a whole Portland coaching staff, like people from Portland that he grew up with that he knew very well. And they're like, bro, you're not being yourself. Like, be yourself. You got this job because like, stop having imposter syndrome. You got this job because you're qualified for it. Like, actually go coach. And from that moment on, like he changed like some of the stuff that they were doing. He was a lot more of a hard ass. They started winning. So like maybe it's just a situation where Adrian Griffin got this monumental trade, like dropped in his lap at the last minute.
Yep. Changes things.
It changes things. He's still trying to feel his way out. He hasn't found his voice yet. He's not exactly sure what he's doing. That's fine. Like I'm of the mind, like, hey, give him a little bit of time, but I'm also like, maybe there is, if it is that this was the wrong hire, like it's better to correct that mistake sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So where I come in on it is, one, it's been 10 games. And ahead of the season starting, I said, hiring Adrian Griffin, that's a tough gig for a first-time head coach to walk into because you're walking into a team with championship expectations. And when you're walking into a team with championship expectations, people expect things to look a certain way, to go a certain way, to be a certain way. And through 10 games in this season, the Bucks haven't looked the way that anybody would have thought that they would with the amount of talent that they have on this roster. And there's reasons for it, right? One, Eric gave the example before about the situation in Phoenix, where it's like, I'm not going to change too much. I just want to tweak it a little bit. And that's exactly what we heard Griff say when he came in about Bud's system. And instead of tweaking things, he completely scrapped. Yeah, he just did that. He just completely scrapped the whole drop concept, although the roster is built around that. We saw in the draft him drafting somebody like Andre Jackson Jr. Like, okay, you must want to play a different way because this is the type of guy who Bud would not have drafted, right? So you see the kind of guy that he wants on his team, and then you see the actual roster, and he's trying to fit that roster's personnel into a scheme that he has thought of, and it does not fit. This is an aging roster that should be playing drop coverage, especially with Brooke out there. Now, you might be able to find different combinations where you can change up that scheme, but the thing with that is I don't feel like the Bucks have identified what their key defensive theme is at this point, and that's one thing they have to do. But there was an article that came out from Journal Sentinel with quotes from post game after the Bulls win, and people were on Adrian Griffin's neck because he's sitting there. He came in here and he's like, "Yo, I applaud this team. They've been going through a lot behind closed doors. It feels like there's kind of like a dark cloud over us at times. And Andre Jackson Jr. comes in the game and he gives us so much energy, and we need that because, like I said, dark cloud over us, and guys are going through things, and they had to deal with minute restrictions and being in and out the lineup like Dame has been, and there's just so many moving pieces. And these guys don't complain; they just come to work and they're trying to get better, and I appreciate that. Like, we're winning games. When we win a game, we're not winning by enough, and it's a lot of so. All of his comments, there were people saying these are red flags, and then Giannis came out saying, like, I've been in the league for 11 years, so if there are things I can take off of his shoulder or help manage, I'm going to do that. And then he said, well, not just me, the whole team. But we know it's Giannis's team. And I have no problem with a superstar being like, hey, I've been in Milwaukee for 11 years. This is my team. Like, if I can help take that pressure off of you, then I'm going to do that. And I do think it's an adjustment period for Griffin because it's a different level of scrutiny, a different situation, a different roster than what he thought that he was going to have. Because as we mentioned, having Drew Holiday is a bit different than having Damian Lillard at your point of attack, especially if you want to have your team be known for a turnover-inducing defense. It changes things. So now is a time where Griff is trying to figure out the best scheme for this particular personnel. Unfortunately, Jay Crowder has gotten hurt, who has been one of the Bucks' most steady players off the bench, steady players, period, I will say. But within that, I think that there is a silver lining with that Jay Crowder injury. And I'm not saying that I want Jay to get injured. I know I'm Marquette down. Me and Jay had a class together. He don't remember that, but I remember that. He was cool as a mug, too. But it opens the door for some of these younger guys like Andre Jackson Jr., like Marjan, to get even more playing time. And those are the type of players that Griff needs. And we just kind of need, I think, to continue filling out which personnel works best. And from the outside looking in, I'm kind of like, dog, why are we still starting Malik Beasley? Like, that's a clear one. Like, let's just switch him out. But then I thought about it more, and I was like, this could be a situation as well where Griff is giving all the vets first shot. Like, hey, you already earned your stripes in this league. You're going to get first shot at trying to see if you can actually do what I can do. And I'm going to continue giving these young guys some minutes and seeing how they do in these limited minutes. And what I think is going to continue to happen is that these young guys are going to continue to show up and make their case like, hey, need a few more of the minutes, boss. Need a few more minutes of them, boss. And some of them vets that we are seeing, they're going to see those minutes start declining. And at some point, we're going to find the right combination. All of that said, we got to keep in mind, too, Giannis really just started looking like Giannis about 3 games ago or so. Dame is still trying to find himself, and people are talking about all this stuff. Like, it's clearly bad tension in the locker room. I'm like, all these dudes have personal lives. And what Dame has been going through in his personal life has been in the media. I don't need to continue to repeat what that man is going through in his personal life. Exactly. He's going through some things that anybody in any job could be affected by. You got that going on. And then the whole fact that he doesn't generally work out over the summer. So he generally starts the season slow because he uses the season to kind of work himself back into shape. You can look at his numbers from November over the last few years. Like, they are not great. And then by December, January, he's looking more like Dame. So that's part of it. And I said, too, his game returned against the Bulls, where it's like he went 3 of 17, I believe, from the field on Monday. And I said, hey, him missing 2 games probably didn't help because he was already trying to play himself into shape. Now you got another pause. Now you got to continue trying to play himself back into shape. Chris Middleton is still on a minutes restriction. And when you get, I believe it's when you have Dame, Chris, and Giannis in the same game, I believe their record is 5-1 right now. So, like, there's an out, and you can see the outline. You have a group of guys who have been playing a drop system, and you see them getting beat a lot on defense when they get into scramble situations because guys aren't used to having to rotate in that way. It was a play against the Bulls where Marjan was telling somebody, you take corner, and they did not take corner. So Marjan just took it, and then no one else rotated around him. And you're just kind of like, well, yeah, of course we gave him an open 3 because the defense isn't on the string. So, like, all that being said, I said a lot, but I'm trying to paint the full picture of what's going on with the Bucks. Like, it's not just one thing. It's them trying to figure things out, get chemistry, it's a lot that they're figuring out. And I understand it's the championship window. They don't have that much time, but they're going to have to make the time this season at the very least. This is the head coach that Giannis wanted.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up. Does that change, like, when we said, like, a coach isn't a fit, but when it's a coach that the players actually want it or that your superstar want it, doesn't that kind of change the dynamic a little bit?
You got to see it out, my boy. At least for this year, you got to see it out.
Like, I get where you're coming from, and I agree to an extent because it's like you can risk further losing the locker room if, like, you get rid of the guy that they like.
Like, it's too much. It's too many changes too quick. Like, we can't do that.
Like, 10 games in, like, no, you can't fire. You can't fire a coach in 10 games. Like, it's not. He hasn't had his full complement of players. He hasn't had enough time for it to kind of gel. Which kind of will get to my point a little bit later.
We can actually segue right into yours when you finish your point.
Yeah. The one last thing I was going to say is that if you recall, like, midway through last year, the Bucks kind of went through a little bit of a swoon. Like, they started off 9-0, and then after that, it kind of got a little dicey. And like I think it was Bill Simmons and I think somebody else in the national media was like, I'm hearing rumblings out of Milwaukee, like things aren't great. And then they went on like a 20-something game. It was a winning streak in the teens, and then you didn't hear that anymore. It's like these are competitive people. Like I would imagine that the locker room isn't great when they're losing or when they're not playing up to what they know is their standard. So like I'm not gonna be concerned about a dark cloud when it's like, yeah, they're not playing well. That's that's the dark cloud. Like you said, like they're not even the games that they're winning, they aren't winning by a margin that you would think. Like they beat the Pistons by what, like 2 or 3, something like that. They beat the Bulls by less than 10, which
9.
They lost the big lead to Pacers. Like the games that they've won, they kind of eked out. The games that they've lost, they got blown out. So like they haven't really played a good game all season.
To finish yet.
Like Dame bailed them out a couple times. Giannis has tried to carry them like the last 3, but
man,
things aren't gelling. But it's a lot of change. It's a lot of new pieces. They had they didn't have the summer to kind of try to work these things out and like pick up or to think through like, oh, okay, like, well, we got this. Like, how are we gonna meld this together?